Welcome to Government Speak. This is where we'll cut through the government speak to get the information you need about county programs, services, and events straight from the source. Welcome to Government Speak, Contra Costa County's official podcast. I'm your host, Christy Jordan, Contra Costa County's Public Information Officer. And on this episode, we have Energy Manager Brendan Havenar-Daughton joining us in studio at 10 Douglas. Brendan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Christy.
So, what does energy management encompass here at Contra Costa County? What's your job?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me on the county pod. This is a great opportunity to share my perspective and also the great work of the energy program team. At its core, energy management is about monitoring, controlling, and conserving energy. And that's a very basic baseline definition. But for the county itself, it's a lot more than that. The reason we invest in resources for our energy management program is to produce critical benefits for our community's sustainable development. The mission of our strategic energy management program is to prioritize clean energy resources for county operations through fiscally responsible actions that improve quality of life for all. So I just want to talk about a few of the benefits that come with the work that we do. There's, of course, the financial benefits of lowering the cost of our utilities to provide services to our community. We leverage state funding and incentive programs to help lower the costs of our projects and activities. And even in some cases, we produce revenue for the county. The obvious benefits are environmental. We really are driven to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that cause global warming and climate change. And also some of the localized pollution that comes from our vehicles and emissions actually from our county facilities that create air pollution that causes respiratory illnesses in our community. And finally, social benefits from these activities. A lot of it comes back to public health outcomes. If we reduce localized pollution, it increases public health. And then there are ancillary benefits around job creation and workforce development. And again, all driven towards this goal of improving quality of life for all.
So all of that said, kind of at a really high level, it's about making smarter decisions about how we provide services and not at the expense of providing that service. So if you're a caseworker and you're driving around the county, you might be in an electric vehicle instead of a gas guzzler, so to speak. And that's just one, kind of high level example of what that might look like. So in terms, it's better for the environment. It's better for those we serve. It's cleaner, and it could be cost savings or even add to the revenue streams for the county. What's your background? Like, how do you become an energy manager for a local government?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually started my studies as an undergrad in something totally different, sustainable agriculture. And through my work and my studies in my master's program, studying international affairs with a focus in global environmental politics, I was really attracted to this challenge of how do we solve climate change at the global level with between sovereign states, which is a tall order, as we all know. I realized quickly that I could put my efforts into at the local level, and so I started a career focused in energy because that's kind of the center of the bullseye when we think about where our GHG greenhouse gas emissions come from, is the way the way we use energy and the sources of energy we use. And so working with local government from early on in my career was always kind of my goal. I've worked in the private sector. I've worked at investor-owned utilities. I've worked at public school districts, and now here at the county. And through all that work, I feel privileged and empowered to tackle this great challenge.
And I mean, it's a tall order. You have 12,000 employees. Everyone comes to, they have different approaches to their work, and then trying to find alignment on these issues that impact everyone. is really key. You talked about some of these, but what are some of the county's key energy goals and strategies that help support you in your role? I know the board had recently taken some actions, but you've also highlighted how we're driving down greenhouse gas emissions in our work. So what are some of those kind of policies and strategies that help you in your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very proud to announce that the Board of Supervisors approved our Strategic Energy Management Plan this January 2025. And this plan, which I have in front of me here, is ties together all of the many other plans that the county has passed over the years, maybe the last 2.5 decades, that address energy management in the county. It also relates to our climate action and adaptation plan, which is intertwined with our general plan, which was just approved, as we all know. And so to break it down, there are a variety of strategies we take and ways that we organize the work. One term I want to teach everybody is distributed energy resources. It's a technical term, and it refers to the energy efficiency projects that we do, the renewable energy projects that we do, the solar, the battery storage projects, the EV charging that we put in. And so through all of these distributed energy resources, we're able to manage and reduce energy use and improve the efficiency of our buildings, of our vehicle fleets, and our operations overall. So happy to give an example. A simple example of energy efficiency is, coming to an office building and making sure that the lighting is as efficient as possible. We all, I think, know about LED lighting and the improved light quality that comes with some of those products, as well as the reduced amount of energy required to operate those that equipment. Some other examples, we've done a fair amount of solar development across the county facilities. Over our parking lots, we have solar arrays and carports. Folks like to park under them for the shade, but they're also producing power for our buildings. And most recently, I've been tasked with focusing on where we can install EV charging infrastructure to help advance our goals around adopting a clean energy fleet, so a zero emission vehicle fleet for the county.
And what kind of goes into that thinking? You think about all the different services the county provides. The needs of one department would be, would vary from another. So when you talk about, let's say, first responders, so police and sheriff deputies who need different types of vehicles, high-speed chases, maybe they're going into rocky or mountainous terrain. Can you talk about that and what that looks like for the county's fleet?
Yes, I think it's important to realize that there is a spectrum of vehicles, and some are going to be a lot easier to electrify than others. The ones that don't have a lot of mileage put on a weekly basis, or they go to and from county buildings that are located close to each other, those are going to be the great candidates. And so our team is in the process of drafting a zero emission vehicle transition plan for our fleet services division, which really looks at what are what's the low hanging fruit, what are the easy vehicles to quote easy vehicles to electrify, and how are we going to address some of the challenges associated with the harder to electrify vehicles. One of the things that we're doing at the county level with many of our city counterparts is we're convening conversations around what's going to be needed at a countywide level with respect to EV charging infrastructure to support some of these hardest to electrify vehicles, like the Code 3 or emergency response vehicles that you mentioned. And what our public safety officials are telling us is, first and foremost, we need chargers in the ground. We need infrastructure that is reliable and accessible, and then we can start to tackle some of the other challenges that come with how we may need to change operations when we're using electric vehicles. So it's a big conversation where it's unfolding, and we're having that over the course of this year with many of our public safety professionals.
So we've talked about EV infrastructure. We've talked about kind of the transition in the county fleet. It's more to come, and it's just that, right? It's a transition, getting everybody on board. But what are some of the challenges and the opportunities that come with that expansion of infrastructure? What does that look like for folks? Yeah.
There are opportunities that we have in our facilities to just plug this new load, these chargers into our main electrical panel in the buildings that we occupy. And we can fit a few chargers. The amount of electricity that's needed to supply electricity for many chargers, which is going to be necessary for our fleet electrification goals, is going to be our buildings don't support the amount that we require. And so we're going to need to work closely with our investor and utility, PG&E, to make sure that we can bring in new service and support that demand. Now that leads us to another challenge, which is capacity constraints on the grid. And so across the grid, there are jurisdictions and zip codes that have less capacity to offer than others. We find higher rates of capacity available in kind of industrialized areas and maybe more constrained capacity in residential areas. What this means is that if we wanted to put in a bunch of chargers to support electric vehicle operation and charging, we might be restricted because the grid doesn't have enough capacity to offer. And so that's one challenge that we face. And in overcoming that challenge, we partner really closely with PG&E to understand where those capacity constraints are and what we can do to overcome them. I will say that one challenge is when we find those capacity constraints, the amount of time that's required to make those upgrades is long. So to upgrade a substation that brings down high voltage power to a community level, to a neighborhood, it may take 8 to 10 years. And just to put in perspective, as we work to electrify society in California, the transportation sector is the biggest kind of tip of the spear to really address this constrained capacity issue that the grid has. As an example, one of the projects that we just completed at one of our county office buildings with 26 EV chargers, when every car is plugged in, it's going to be pulling more power than the building itself. And so if we think that we're going to start to double the amount of power our buildings require and even surpass that, we're going to really have to look at the grid and how we're going to partner with PG&E to make sure we have the power that we need. So
it's a lot of advocacy and partnership and being able to identify those areas in order to enable the county to be able to do this kind of work. It seems like a very slow process with a lot outside of our control. Why is it worth it?
Well, aside from the goals at the state level to electrify our transportation system, there are county level policies that require purchasing of zero emission vehicles. And those policies are based on analyses that tie back to some of the benefits I was mentioning earlier on, whether it's eventual life cycle cost savings, life cycle carbon emission reductions. These are the things that, and then of course public health benefits. These are the things that are going to be worth the investment to move away from fossil fuel polluting vehicles. And to invest in electric technology.
Beyond the environmental and the health benefits, you've also talked about job creation. So how does the specific to the expansion of EV infrastructure kind of feed into economic development?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe that through the work of transportation electrification, the work of adopting and electric vehicles and making electric vehicle technology accessible to all in our county will create an incredible demand to upgrade the grid. And with that comes an ability to invite business to take root in our county because now we have the capacity, the electrical capacity to offer for business services. I am aware of situations where larger businesses that demand a lot of electricity may not have found what they need in our county and have gone to other counties to set up shop. And so the transportation electrification goal is going to be that tip of the spear that helps us ask for and ensure that we get the demand, the capacity demand that we require from PG&E, not only for transportation, but also for business development. With business comes jobs, and the state goals are clear that, we're moving everything towards electrification. And so as we work towards also looking at opportunities to get natural gas out of our buildings and electrify our heating and air conditioning systems, we're also, that's kind of a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of power that's needed for our vehicles and transportation.
So if the environmental arguments aren't compelling and the health arguments aren't compelling, you're actually highlighting missed opportunities to bring in new businesses and grow the local economy, which is huge. I mean, if it translates into jobs for folks, that's definitely something to consider as well. In terms of kind of some of the innovative projects that the county is looking at, what are we pursuing as a local government to expand kind of some of our abilities to provide services this way?
Yeah, a couple projects I'd like to highlight are some of the microgrid projects, and I should probably define
What's
microgrid.
What's a microgrid? It sounds intuitive, but for those of us who might not follow, what is a microgrid?
Yeah, at its basic level, being able to island ourselves a building. Let me start over. A microgrid allows us to operate when the grid goes down. It allows our building to what we call island itself from the grid and either generate its own electricity or pull from a battery storage system that allows it to continue operations. So essentially is an independent grid from the larger electrical grid.
So you're still able to provide electricity and services because you've built in kind of a backup if the grid goes down. You're still able to function and operate.
That's right. And so that definition really highlights the resiliency component, the ability to continue doing work when there's disruption to the system. But there are other benefits to microgrids, and kind of tying back to some of the utility cost savings and the revenue generation that can come from investing in this technology. So, for example, the California Independent System Operator, which is the organization that controls and balances the electrical grid. Many of our listeners may know or be familiar with flex alerts. And so when the heat, the late summer heat gets high and everybody's putting their AC on, the grid is at risk of overloading. And from that will come rolling brownouts or blackouts. And so what they do is they put a flex alert out and they say, everybody, please reduce your usage so we don't have to experience the blackouts. And so our investing in these distributed energy resources and in this microgrid design will allow us to better respond to some of those flex alerts. It will also allow us to do what's called energy arbitrage, which is essentially charging our batteries when electricity costs are low, and then discharging those batteries when electricity costs are high. So that is also creating downward pressure on our utility costs.
So some of those flex alerts might look like, raise the temperature of your air conditioner so that it's not constantly running, or wash your dishes in your dishwasher at a certain time where the demand is lower.
That's right.
Okay. What are some of the steps that the county's taking? We've talked about infrastructure, we've talked about job creation, we've talked about public health benefits. What steps is the county taking to ensure that all communities benefit from clean energy and EV programs? It's one thing to talk about it in the context of the services provided by the county, or what it's attempting to create to bring in economic development that can help with job creation and strengthen the local economy. But how do we make sure everyone benefits from this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's important to highlight the distinction between my role as energy manager for the county, focused on county operations and assets and kind of inward focused, whereas I partner very closely with our colleagues, my team members over at the Department of Conservation and Development, the sustainability team, who are kind of outward focused and looking at the community and doing a lot of partnering with community groups. However, there's some overlap there. One really pertinent example when it comes to EV charging infrastructure, when you look at where the private sector is building EV infrastructure, it's where they can make the most revenue. It's also where they're some of that development is they're afraid of vandalism, and so frankly they'll just skip over certain communities, and so it's incumbent upon the county to be aware of those issues and identify what we call charging deserts, and make sure that as we develop our projects and think about where the highest need is for charging infrastructure, we're taking that data into account in placing our charging infrastructure in the community. And I will say, a lot of our charging infrastructure is at our facilities where our vehicles sleep overnight, but we also need charging infrastructure out in the community for our own vehicles, and we're looking at opportunities to open up those to the public and make sure we can allow access that allows for everyone to use the infrastructure.
In thinking about kind of public access to that infrastructure, it also is going to require, and this is myself included, behavior changes. So can you talk about kind of range anxiety? So you're driving, you see a gas station on every corner, but where am I going to charge my vehicle? That might turn some folks off from actually making an EV leap to EVs. So how do you manage kind of behavior changes for drivers who might feel more comfortable seeing a gas station on every street corner?
Yes, it's a big challenge, and I think the number one strategy to overcome range anxiety is to get people in the driver's seat of an EV. I remember I've been driving an EV for about 5 years. I remember 6 years ago not knowing anything really about EVs and how they operate, and kind of having that the anxiety of something new, and how reliable is it going to be. Once I started driving the EV, I quickly learned what was relevant and real around that anxiety, and what was kind of conjecture, and so again, getting people in the driver's seat is the best way to start overcoming that range anxiety. When the county started investing in EVs, the range of a lot of those vehicles were less than 100 miles. Now we're looking at vehicles that are 350, 400 miles. And soon, some of our manufacturers have announced batteries technology that will get us to 500 or 600 miles. But you're right. There's with every transition, there's always going to be some level of pain and discomfort, and folks, that's what comes along with change. And so we need to figure out, what's most important issues to address and how to support our employees.
How can residents get involved with some of these efforts, or where can they go, maybe online, plug your website and your social? Where can they go to see and read more about the county's plans and efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, I'm pointing folks to the Department of Conservation and Development, their sustainability page. It talks a lot about the goals and activities of the county around sustainability in general, and has some resources for folks that are thinking about buying an EV, links to EV calculators to kind of get a sense of the total cost of ownership, we call it. How much am I going to save, not just on gas, but, on maintenance costs over time? And does this make sense for me? And how does charging work at the home? How do I navigate those questions? So there are some resources at the Department of Conservation and Development, and Public Works. We're also standing up our own landing page for the work that we're doing. But again, our work is focused kind of inward towards county operations. But I will say that, where it makes sense, we're going to try to open up our EV charging infrastructure for county for county residents and businesses where it makes sense. Sometimes there's going to be tension between making sure we have dedicated charging resources for our fleet and being able to balance that with some of the needs in the community, because I know, we're still at the beginning of the curve here, and charging infrastructure is not ubiquitous across the county yet. So we're doing all that we can to support the adoption countywide.
So it's a big discussion and more to come, but stay tuned is what it sounds like.
Oh, yes.
Is
absolutely.
there anything else that we have not covered in our discussion? Like, what's the biggest takeaway? If no one else was listening to anything else we talked about today, what would be the one key piece of information you'd want them to remember?
Yeah, through energy management and our strategic energy management program with the county, there's incredible value in, again, economic benefits, social benefits, and environmental benefits. And this is one of the areas of work in public works that actually reduces cost and can create revenue. And through this work, it doesn't just have to be investing in things that are great, but investing in good business practices that provide, again, quality of life for all. So, for me, the takeaway is let's invest in this program and let's see what we can do.
Well, Brendan, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And that's today's show. I'm your host, Christy Jordan, Contra Costa County's Public Information Officer. And thanks for joining us on the Government Speak podcast, brought to you by the Office of Communications and Media. But don't just take our word for it. Stay curious, stay connected, and stay informed. Until next time, keep your mind open and your facts straight.